Right, the 2018 question then, the functions question, again linked algebra with functions, so same as it did in 2013 and 14. So it started off with the piece of algebra, solve the following equation, give each answer correct to 2 decimal places. Okay, so not a functions question, an algebra question. That's okay. So x squared minus, x squared minus 4x minus 7 equals 0. Okay, typically when a question asks you to give answers correct to 2 decimal places, that typically means, or that normally means, that if I try and get the factors of minus 7, if I wanted to factorize it like such, it's minus 7 plus 1 or plus 7 minus 1. What it typically means is that there's no line of factors across here that will give me the minus 4. So you can see minus 7 plus 1 is minus 6. That's not minus 4. Plus 7 minus 1 is plus 6. That's not minus 4. So it's not that there's no factors of 7 that gives you minus 4. It's just that there's no factors, there's no whole number factors of minus 7 that gives you 4. It's decimal places, it's fractional numbers. Okay, so it's too hard then to do to solve a quadratic when it's not whole numbers. So that is where we use the minus b formula that's in your log tables. Let me just see if I can find it. Here on page 20. Okay, so the famous minus b formula. X is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, assuming a quadratic is always in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So you can see a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, c is the number in front, is the number on its own. Okay, so that's what we're going to use to solve this, because that's where the minus b formula comes out on its own. So any quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Now, be careful, because that doesn't mean that b has to be a plus, okay? It just means that when we write it down, we just go plus. It'll be very hard to write down plus or minus all the way along. Okay, now this might be new to some of you, so bear with it. You mightn't have done this in school yet. Doesn't matter, you'll do it at some stage during your junior cert, okay? So let me write down the formula so you can see it. So it tells me x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so I need to know in this formula, what's my a, what's my b, what's my c. Okay, so a is the number in front of x squared. And you see the way in that one now, there's no number in front of x squared, okay? But there's the number 1. Okay, when there's no number, it couldn't be 0 because then there'd be no x squared term. It's 1. B is the number in front of x. So you see, I'm not putting in the x squared, I'm not putting in the x's, just the numbers. And you have to take the sign with it. B is minus 4. And c then is the number on its own. And again, you have to take the sign with it. Okay, so if you look across here, there's no x squared there. I just know that a is the number in front of x squared. So that's how I know which one is a. There's no x here. So b is the number in front of x and then c. Okay, and you sub them into this formula here. So that you get x being equal to minus b, so minus 4, plus or minus the square root of minus 4 squared minus 4 ac. And you'll get as fast as I am here at doing it by the time you have it done for your junior cert, because it comes up a lot. Okay, so then we tidy. So minus 4 is 4. Plus or minus, and I'll come back to the plus or minus in a minute. Don't worry about that. 2 1s on the bottom is 2. Okay, and you see this square root sign? I put all that into the calculator in one go. So on my calculator now, I am hitting the square root of bracket minus 4, close my bracket, squared, minus 4, bracket 1, bracket minus 7 equals. And I got 2 root 11 for that. So a third number, which is fine. It's just not rounded yet. Okay, so you see just a couple of small things. You see 4AC, when letters are written against each other like that, that is 4 multiplied by A multiplied by C. So that's what all these brackets here mean. They're all just multiplied by each other. Okay, so now this is where I want to deal with the plus or the minus. So as you know, with any quadratic, when you solve it, so in other words, do you remember when I started to solve this? I had 2 brackets, I had x and x. Okay, I would get one answer from here, and I'd get another answer from this bracket. So every quadratic has 2 answers. Okay, so doesn't it make sense then that when I solve it with the minus b formula, I should get the same answers, but I should also get 2. So where the 2 answers comes from is that plus and minus. So the first answer comes from 4, and I select the plus. Okay, plus 2 root 11 all over 2, and I solve that. And the second answer comes from the minus this time, 2 root 11 all over 2. Okay, so when you're putting this into the calculator, make sure you hit the fraction button first, because you have to add all of that top one and then divide it by 2. Okay, if you don't hit the fraction button at the start, you end up putting this into the calculator. And that's wrong. It's all over 2. So you have to hit that fraction button from the start. So hit the fraction button, 4 plus 2 root 11 on the top, and then on the bottom I have 2, and I'm getting 2 plus root 11. And it asked for decimal places here. So I'm S to D in him, and it's 2 decimal places, 5.3166. And to 2 decimal places, I need to look at the 6. It's going to round them up to 5.32. Okay, so I'm just going to move him down a little bit because I didn't leave myself enough room. So 5.32, is that rounded? And then my second answer comes from minus 2 root 11 over 2. So you don't have to delete it. You can just go back on your calculator and change the plus to a minus. And you get 2 minus root 11. If you S to D him, we're getting minus 1.3166 or minus 1.32. So they are your 2 answers for that equation. Okay, so in other words, they're the roots. If I was to form the brackets like we were doing, he would be minus 5.32 and he would be plus 1.32. Okay, but there's no way you were going to get those factors of 7 to give you the 4. And you can see how the 4 comes out of them now. Okay, so that's part A. So the minus b formula, and it will come up in your junior cert at some place. You do not get away without doing it. Okay, so part B then, the solutions of the equation x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0 are x is equal to minus 1 and x is equal to 2. Okay, might highlight them. Okay, the table below shows 3 graphs A, B and C. One of these is the graph of f of x equals x squared minus x minus 2. Put a tick in the correct box to show it. Okay, well, this is where algebra meets functions, and you have to know that the roots or the solutions of an equation, are its roots where it cuts through the x-axis. Okay, so these were kind enough, they didn't ask me to solve the equation, they gave them to me. So x is minus 1, So it could be that one, that's a -1, that's a -1. It's not that one because it's not cutting through at -1. And the other one is 2, which is here and here. Okay, now this is interesting. Okay, so we know straight away it's not him. Okay, he's gone. Right, so how do we figure it out? Well, where does it cut through the y-axis? Because that's all that's different. Do you see the way it's cutting through at -1 and 2 here and -1 and 2? So there's its roots. Okay, so that all that's different is where it's cutting through the y-axis. Okay, now another piece of theory. I'm just going to delete this bit off. Okay, it's recorded anyway, just to give myself a bit more room. So another piece of theory is where a graph cuts through the x and y axis. Okay, so if you're asked where does a graph cut the x-axis, okay, well, this is what we're doing. This gives you the right. I would always write down at the x-axis y is 0 and I suppose f of x is y, so that's why I'm letting it equal to 0. Okay, and then you solve it. So that's where it cuts through the x-axis. Okay, now where does a graph cut the y-axis? Well, at the y-axis, it happens to be the x-coordinate that's 0. Okay, and why is that? Well, if I draw a few axes, there's 1, there's 2, there's 1, there's 2. If we look at the actual coordinates on the x-axis, it's x comma y. This one is x comma y. So you can see that's why the y-coordinate is always 0 at the x-axis. In the same way on the y-axis, the coordinates of him are x comma y. The coordinates of him are x comma y. Okay, so the x-axis, the x-coordinate is always 0 at the y-axis. So to find where it cuts the y-axis, we take the function and we let x equal 0. Sorry, I shouldn't have had it equal 0 there now. Equals y, so -2 is where it cuts through the y-axis. Okay, and I will be doing questions on where does it cut through the x and y axis. Okay, so this is the piece of theory that in red I will also say it cuts the y-axis at -2. Okay, so let's come back to our graphs again. Okay, we're ruling out this one. Okay, either of these two work when you look at their roots, but this is the right one for where it cuts through the y-axis. Okay, so again, where functions meets algebra.